Hello, and welcome to the 10th and final episode of this season's Fractional Futures, where I'm joined by Dan Gwalter, an executive coach and founder of No Nonsense Leadership. Hi, Dan. How are you? These first 10 episodes have whizzed by, haven't they?
Yeah, I'm quite impressed. We've clearly found a pattern. It's been great talking to you. What about yourself? How have you been?
I've been well and learning new skills on how to edit these podcasts. It's relatively straightforward once you know how, but it takes a bit of learning. Like all good things, you have to learn these things first. So, but no, really delighted how they're turning out. So, and no doubt our viewers are getting value from them as well.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who are new to the podcast, in our last episode, Dan and I looked at how fractional CMOs need to master the transition to a portfolio career and develop new skills and personal resilience to succeed. In this episode, Dan and I will be focusing on some of the common pitfalls associated with a portfolio career. So we'll be covering things like common growth traps, how to maintain quality while scaling your service, financial management and planning for growth, and also we'll be looking at how you can stay ahead of industry trends. So Dan, when you coach your fractional executives and you talk about identifying growth traps, what do you mean by that term? How do you spot them and how do you overcome them?
It's a great point. This whole journey started because I called out half a dozen fractionals on LinkedIn a few years back and said, if you're calling yourself a fractional and you've got just one client that's occupying 100% of your time, you're a contractor, or you're not a fractional, you're a whole. And what I was really saying in quite an abrupt fashion was, you have to find time, let's create time to do everything else. So you have to find time to build your brand, to nurture the existing relationships that you've created and to create new relationships. And so for me, the biggest growth trap that people fall into is they identify a potential client and they sell themselves 100%. And because of that, they're unable to do anything else. It's not contractually they're unable to, it's mentally. You don't have headspace, you don't have the physical time at the end of a working day to come back and start, campaigning or talking to other people or progressing. So for me, that's the biggest growth trap that I see people fall into, and I explicitly coach around that.
And how do you find yourself getting into that trap? Because you might be doing it subconsciously and not be aware. So what are the signs, what are the triggers for someone to recognize that?
All organizations that are owner operated, so if I take Fractional as an example, it's an owner operated business, they all suffer the same problem at some point in time, which is they don't know how to say no. There's a huge stigma associated with saying no. What if saying no to this client means that I never find another client? Or what if that client tells everybody else in the marketplace that I'm not a very good person? But the reality is that you chose to create a fractional business because you wanted more control over your direction, over your working style, over your future. And so in the first instance, when you're sitting down and you're defining that ideal customer, you should be defining it in both directions, not just what are they, but what do they need? What's that going to mean for you? What's the demand curve look like? And be honest with yourself. If you're speaking to people and it sounds like what they're looking for is a hybrid between a perm, an interim, or a fractional, then are they actually the right client for you? Are you able to service them without destroying your business in the process? Because in reality, the client won't care too much if you dedicate 100% of your time to them, and at the end of 6 months, they chop you free and you've got nothing. That's not the client's concern. That is your concern to look out for. So for me, I set sort of thresholds. I know how much time it takes to run the business. I know how much time it takes to land a new client. I know how much time it takes to service a client. And I know how much time it takes to do the diagnostic services that I offer. And so I've got a collection of thresholds that, the boundaries are a little bit blurred at times, and there are certainly times in the year where I burn hot, but I still burn within intolerances so that I'm able to make sure the other parts of my business continue to function, and I don't find myself in that sort of exuberant bear trap. I've just walked in and now I'm snagged for 6 to 8 months working 5 days a week full time for an organization.
You're right, and I think there's a natural tendency for people coming into this portfolio career for the first time and probably been a little bit naive, because I think any client's a good client as long as I get my money at the end of the month for every invoice. that's fine. But for me personally, when I was setting out on this journey, I would come across prospects that I thought, actually, there's an opportunity here. But there's always a nagging doubt somewhere at the back of my mind thinking, actually, this might be a difficult person to work with or difficult company to work for. Maybe they're a little bit too small, but because they're showing interest, I'll just do it anyway because, cash is king. And I think it gets back down to that ICP. It's really about niching right down who is your perfect client, what are their needs, and how are you going to service them, and really sticking to that. And sometimes saying no, or if you get a flurry of inquiries, if they don't fit your ICP, it's okay to say no, because the last thing you want to do is spend too much time over servicing those prospects because they're the wrong fit. So saying no and knowing your ICP is a really, really important thing to get right from day one.
I think to that point, if I look at my coaching practice, the ICP is the first part of the process. And the third part of the process is product and offer. And what I'm really looking for is, do my coaching clients create products and offers that lend themselves to being value-based rather than time-based? Because that's the easiest way to avoid that bear trap, is create a product that is value-based. That way you get a lot more control over the time that it's delivered and how it's delivered. And then my personal default fallback, if I find a client in conversation that looks like what they actually need is a full-time representative, for a significant period of time, I don't mind doing it for a couple of weeks, but I'm not there for full-time 6 months is not a thing. I do have a huge network now of people that are perpetually on the lookout. The marketplace is dominated by interims and contractors that are looking for exactly that type of work. So I'll make a warm introduction and I'll pass it off, because if it's going to cause my business a problem in the medium term, I'd rather not do it.
And that moves us on nicely to the next topic, I guess, which is managing and sustaining growth. How do you maintain quality while scaling your service? Because the more clients you take on, something's going to give. Unless you're very, very rigid and you have really robust processes to manage multiple clients simultaneously, if you don't have that in place, it's going to be easy for your service quality to maybe slip slightly. Maybe you've got confused with different conversations you've had. So in terms of having a finite number of hours a day, if we take on too many clients, it will become more difficult unless you find time to rest or you have the processes to manage that. So how do you ensure that you can maintain a high level of service whilst scaling?
I have a very strong philosophy that says, because the cost of acquisition for new clients is so high, your time is always best spent looking after those clients. If you think about it this way, if it takes you 3 months of continuous nurturing, several conversations, maybe a couple of glitches, maybe a couple of on-site visits to land a client, then it stands to reason that you probably invested circa £10,000 of your own time without any form of remuneration. With that in the back of your mind, would you willingly neglect the relationship or neglect the agreement once you've signed them and risk losing that and never recouping those funds? My answer is no. So for me, it's priorities. Incumbent clients are always the top of the list. They are more important to me than clients that are on the cusp of signing an agreement or clients that are coming out of the woodwork and looking for conversation. So I focus my energy in that regard. But also I'm going to be lucky that I did 10 years in various consultancies around the world, and in each of those environments, I was expected to be working with multiple clients. I was client lead it wasn't uncommon for me to be client lead with, say, 10 clients at a time. And so you do develop, call them coping mechanisms, I guess, but I'd rather call them processes. You develop processes that enable you to work at that scale with that number of clients in parallel without forgetting key facts, without missing important points, without taking your eye off the ball. You have to do that. You do have to become what I would classify as hyper productive. The ability to context switch client, or the ability to context switch between client activity and sales activity and business development activity. You have to learn those skills.
You're absolutely right. And I think people coming to this fractional world also have to remember that your own practice is a client as well. You have to work on your own business to develop it. And that takes time as well as servicing your clients. My personal perspective is that, VCMO is one of my clients, and I dedicate the same amount of time to that as I do other clients. And that's kind of a good way to help divvy up the time. Because if I just purely focus on my business, I'm neglecting clients. If I focus too much on clients, I'm neglecting my business. So you do need to find that healthy medium, I guess. For the first time, when you've got 0 clients and you've got your first client on board and it's going well, when you've got your second and third client, at what point do you decide I've got too many? Because for some people, it might be 5 clients might be enough. Some people it might just be 2. But how do you know when you've got the right blend of clients?
The only way I can answer it, when you've got the wrong blend. That's really easy to spot. You're actually stressed. You've never got enough time in the day, and everything feels like it's on the verge of going wrong. Then you've overstepped the line. I guess for me personally, it came with practice. You develop an intuition for a client in early conversation as to how much time they're going to take. The biggest turning point for me was creating a product-based practice. So if I look at my high ticket offers now are very, very product focused. I know exactly how many hours in a month it would take me to deliver that product. And yes, I can scale it up for get all the client, or I can scale it down. But I know, the nature of the product makes it very clear to the client. It manages their expectations to what they're getting and when they're getting it. And that's super important, because that then tells me how far can I scale it before I run out of time, or before I run out of energy. But so for me on the fractional CTO side, 4 is the maximum. At 4, I am as busy as I want to be, which is about 50% of the time. Yeah, that's my benchmark, is 50% of the time is dedicated to fractional clients. But I do cover all of my costs for those 4 clients, regardless of who they are. So what do I do the rest of the time? Obviously, my coaching business now takes up a significant portion of time, so that's cool. But my business development activities themselves continue. I still do all of my online activity. I still do all of my nurturing and all of my lead back work. And that's super important. But for anybody listening in thinking, well, actually, if I've got 4 clients, is that my ceiling? And let's talk about it. Let's be capitalist for a split second. We're all in this to earn some money. If 4 clients pays your bills and gives you the lifestyle that you want, that's great. If you want to go and earn more than that, then focus your energy into your mid-ticket offer, your diagnostic offer, because that can generate revenue and can build future pipeline for when any of your rostered clients drop off. And if you still don't have the capacity at the end of those diagnostic products to actually take those clients forward on their journey, then you have the option to outsource it, to hand it off, but you still make the revenue on the diagnostic offers. That's how I approach the law.
That probably moves us nicely into the next topic, which is around future-proofing your career. So once you know what your magic number is in terms of clients and the blend of work that you want to take on and how you divvy up your time, you want to make sure that's future-proof, because those clients will get to, you will take those clients to a point where they say, right, we don't need you anymore. We're ready to backfill you with a full-time person because we've got the business to the right scale, or we just don't need you anymore because we're happy. You've embedded everything we need, which is great, and we can self-sustain. Once you've got everything in place, and with more senior execs coming into this fractional work style, you're going to start competing with other fractional executives for the same clients. So all of a sudden, as you've got more competitors fighting for the same prospects, there might be other fractional execs who have a stronger track record than you. There might be other fractional execs that have a wider range of skills or a greater level of experience across more sectors. How do you stay ahead of industry trends?
Trends, they're better from change in this landscape. The things that were important last year are not important this year, and that's just the nature of the beast. In terms of the way that I look at it, when you first start out, you have to be really clear on just one offer. Your primary offer, being that the mid-ticket offer, which is what I would advocate, and the diagnostic one, or the high-ticket offer, the retained service. That's fine. Once that is well established and you are generating a healthy amount of revenue, you're above the bread line, then it's time to start thinking about the and what else. Because clients are going to come with value, not necessarily because they're not necessarily because they've hired somebody permanently, but just because your natural use to them has depleted. In my opinion, one of the best things that I did for my business was I developed a third option, which is only applicable to people I've already worked with. That third option is the long-term picture. So if you've worked with me on a retained service for maybe a year and you feel that you're ready to go, continue that journey on your own, I do offer a safety net option, which is a much smaller contract. It runs year to year, gives you a very, very small amount of check-in. But it's in essence a very small retained service. The way I looked at it was, if I could get just 20% of my clients year on year to join that, then I'm building up a revenue stream that is a lot less effort to deliver and will only continue to grow over time. So that's how I approached it from a business preservation perspective. In terms of industry trends, it's a really challenging topic, okay? I see so many fractional people coming to market, telling the world that they do absolutely everything. All of these great skills, all of these great experiences, plus every new trend that hits the market. And the reality is it just becomes very wishy-washy in terms of what you're selling and who you're selling it to. And in actual fact, in my opinion, the more skills that you layer in, the more options, the more capabilities that you layer in, the further away your audience gets. So for me, when I think about industry trends, I look at it and go, is it an opportunity to pivot into that space, or is it a value-added service that I would talk about exclusively once I've had some form of contact with a potential client? I definitely wouldn't go to market starting to shout about it through content and through marketing channels, because it devalues what I already do. And unless what I'm already doing is failing, then I have no reasons to want to pivot. If what I'm doing is failing, the demand is slowing down or it's become hyper competitive, then I may consider pivoting into that space and making that my primary offer.
That's really, really good advice there. That's probably a good point to close the show and close this season. So if you've been listening or watching this episode, I hope you find value from the discussion and take what you've learned into the next part of your fractional marketing career. So that concludes our episodes for season 1. If you want to go back and listen to previous episodes, simply search for Fractional Futures on your favorite podcast directory. You'll find us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and more. Or you can visit the VCMO website at vcmo.uk. Just go to the resources section. In the next season, I'll be interviewing fractional CMOs from around the world to get their perspectives on how the business landscape is embracing the fractional leadership model, as well as insights into their personal journey. Dan, I'd just like to say thank you for all of your insights for this season. I've really enjoyed your company on these 10 episodes, and I know listeners have found plenty of value too. Before we sign off, would you like to say a few words about your coaching service and the offer that you may have for our listeners?
Before I do, it's been awesome. This season has been great fun to record. And to be honest, I haven't really had to prepare for a lot of it because you're right in the sweet spot when I talk about most of the time. So in terms of the audience, what do I offer? The Fractional Formula is my coaching program. That is my only coaching program, in fact. It's entirely designed to take you from the very, very beginning of your journey. So, identify your niche or your customer, right the way through to the other end where you are nurturing and you are using social selling techniques to actually find clients and land clients. The program lasts 7 weeks, and then it's backed by a 1-year support agreement where I will continue to support you with monthly one-to-ones. And what I'm going to say is if anybody feels like they may need some coaching or they may need some additional support on this journey, feel free to drop me a note. I talk to people every day of the week, via LinkedIn, via email, via Zoom calls. Drop me a note. Let's have a conversation and see if anything I do could be of use to you. And if it isn't, I'm more than happy to have a conversation anyway.
Fantastic. Every episode has all the links to Dan anyway. So follow the episode notes and you'll find links to Dan's LinkedIn and also Fractional Futures website as well. So Dan, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. I know I've grabbed you for another season in the future, but we'll give you a break so you can enjoy your horse riding, and good luck for your competition this weekend, and look forward to speaking to you real soon.
Cheers, buddy. Take care, and I will speak to you very, very soon.